Good day, everyone. My name is Nasser, a PhD student at People Friendship University of Russia, Rodain. Today, I'll be talking about the inevitability of financial risk in businesses and how to overcome them with a focus in Saudi Arabia. In the outlines, I'll start off with a brief introduction followed by a literature review, and then we'll shed some lights on an overview of risk in Saudi Arabia and the research methods that was adopted in the research, followed by findings and conclusion. Going to the introduction slide, number 3, businesses is not without risk. From a financial point of view, risk can be considered as the possibility of deviations in the expected future, which causes the desired result to be different from the expected one. In the business, people who choose to do business must accept the fact that risk is an integral part of their businesses, and people have to realize the fact that a business has been operating for more than 5 or even 10 years doesn't mean that it has become immune to risk. And when it comes to risk concept, there can be both positive and negative meanings depending on the preferences of the risk consumers. Risk can also be seen as making differences in the yield between the planned, the required, and the expected result. So, the yield levels will be subject to risk appetite. When it comes to investment in developing countries, risk is almost inevitable. Corruption, lack of internal control, and mismanagement creates an enabling environment for risk to thrive. Moving to the next slide, in the literature review, it shows a various type of financial risk that can occur on corporates, such as liquidity risk, counterparty risk, and other market risk, especially sudden changes in exchange rate for multinational companies. All these risks can be triggered by facts like instability of financial market, other changes in economic factors, internal company actions, or even legal interventions in the case of government development of new laws and so on. That being said, business cooperation, especially in volatile countries like Saudi Arabia, are vulnerable to all these kind of risk, especially in the face of increasing global business activities. However, non-financial multinationals can take advantages of those financials or operative hedging to shield themselves against those risks. And management of financial risk should be done by the firm and its shareholders, where a lot of studies show that the shareholders' value can be increased through corporate risk management in the face of capital market imperfections such as costly external financing, agency conflicts, taxes, as well as direct and indirect financing. Moving to the next slide, slide number 5, sharing an overview of risk in Saudi Arabia. As you all may know, Saudi Arabia, as most of you would know, that it's considered as one of the largest economy in the Middle East, with an economy that relies almost entirely on oil. GDP growth has gradually increased since 2015, to the point where the economy entered into a historical recession in 2017. The graph in the slide shows that how economy of Saudi Arabia has declined in the last 5 years, especially as regards to the foreign direct investment, where this underscores the need to adopt efficient strategies that will minimize financial risk, which is a major concern to the foreign investors as well as the owners of the multinational companies. The Saudi Arabia Monetary Policy Authority, which is known as SAMA, has introduced a risk management and compliance strategy in its strategy to maintain a culture with a high level of knowledge and awareness on a scientific and technical basis. In order to protect SAMA resources, the Risk and Compliance Department has developed a mechanism and methods for managing potential risks, constantly improving the risk culture and at the same time increasing the level of compliance with international, local, and domestic standards. A review of a case that was done for a mining company named Ma'aden in Saudi Arabia gives an insight into corporate risk management in the country. Ma'aden, for its business, has adopted a risk management method in accordance with the ISO 31000 standard, which is based on identifying, analyzing, assessing risk, and then how to deal with risk by contracting consultant and all experienced people, and then a review of a committee who has been appointed by the board of directors, which takes responsibility for monitoring the internal control system as well as procedures and rules that govern risk management and access to periodic reporting and monitoring and risk management. This all was done through the Tactical Risk Committee and Operation Risk Committee, and this is followed by financial strategies that determines the number of risk by which the company must take a decision, and therefore applies to the financial industry of derivatives, financial instrument, and the insurance industry. Since any risk is associated with the financial transaction, it's necessary to identify scenarios that define the risk to eliminate them. An external audit, which is one of the requirements of the Saudi body for legal accountants, represented by the internal audit, does assessment of practices, monitoring of risk for the fight and reporting to the company management, as well as making suggestions to the management for improvement. Going to next slide, which is slide number 6. For the research, a quantitative research method that engages the technique of literature review was used in this research, which helps in identifying trends and thinking and opinions. So that was the method was adopted for the research. Moving to the next slide, which is slide number 7. For research, the major findings for our research: it is essential to understand that the financial risk management process is not a one-time thing. It should be a continuous process that shouldn't be taken for granted, as financial risk can arise from all sides at any time. Before starting the financial risk management process, there should be a very clear understanding of goals and objectives of the organizations, since they will determine the directions of all activities. So, 6 steps to be followed in order to achieve a proper risk management result. The first step is to identify and prioritize financial risk that relate to the businesses, which can be done through different type of processes like quantitative risk management or risk assessment and control or audit of financial risk. The second step is the determinations of the level of the risk tolerance in the organizations, where the team can focus on creating value, knowing that they are still working within the acceptable limits in terms of risk. The third step is to formulate a risk management strategy, whereas the business will identify risk mitigation strategy that it will be adopted to manage the financial risk it faces in the future. The fourth step is the implementations of the plan of the strategy. And the fifth step, we can measure and refine those risks, where risk reduction strategy that need to be implemented should be closely monitored to track their processes and determine whether they are effective or not effective or require other changes. In the sixth step, we can report the result of the processes. At each stage of the process, communication is very important. Top management should be aware of the entire risk management processes, especially because it is they would decide on those risks, and also they will direct them for any risk reduction strategies where they can use it to implement in the strategy. It's also strongly recommended that other members of the organizations should be informed of the company risk management initiatives to strengthen their confidence in the company. Going to the next slide and the last slide, as a conclusion, financial risk will always be presented in the company or in any businesses. And management and owners can manage these risks or mitigate them or even minimize the negative consequences of the risk for the company. So the measures adopted by Ma'aden and our case study in their operations to mitigate risk in Saudi Arabia investment climate was proved to be productive, especially for the use of two standing committees like the Tactical Risk Committee and the Operation Risk Committee to monitor risk occurrence and also to fashion out appropriate response. And by this, I reach to the end of my presentations. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.